there, Brittany here from Be Crafty. If you're new here, welcome, and if not, thank you so much for coming back. In today's tutorial, we're going to be making the super fun fall-inspired market bag. This bag will be perfect for toting books from your favorite shop around the corner to the nearest coffee house or for produce from your local farmer's market. This bag makes for a great gift, so make sure you bookmark this tutorial for holiday season making because trust me, all of your friends and family will want these bags. This tutorial is geared for advanced beginner crocheters or higher and assumes you already know the following skills: chaining, single crochet, double crochet, slip stitch, and a basic single crochet decrease. Once you've mastered these skills, I'm confident you can tackle this pattern. To make your own, here's what you'll need: 3 to 4 balls of Lion brand 24/7 cotton, a 4.5mm hook, scissors, and a yarn needle. As always, I'll have links to the written pattern in the video's description box. You can view the free version of the pattern on my blog, and I'll also have a link to the printable PDF version which can be purchased in my shop. You'll want to follow along with the written instructions as you watch this tutorial to help guide you through this project. So now, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with a slip knot on our hook, and we're going to make our foundation chain. Make a foundation chain of 126 chains. For demonstration purposes, I'll be making a mini sample. My mini sample is just going to have 26 chains, but you'll be following the same instructions for the full chain length. Okay, so I have my foundation chain. Remember, yours should be 126 chains, so yours should be way longer than mine. I'm just making a mini sample. I like to work into the back bar of the foundation chain, so if you just rotate it over to see the little bar that runs down the back of your foundation chain, we're going to be working into those back bars. Starting in the 6th chain from our hook, we're going to make a double crochet. And as a refresher, a double crochet is you yarn over, insert your hook, draw up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, and pull through last 2 loops on your hook. That's a double crochet. So we're going to chain 1, we're going to skip a chain, and we're going to double crochet into the next chain. Okay, so we're going to chain 1, skip a chain, and double crochet into the next chain. Chain 1, skip a chain, and we're going to double crochet into the next chain. Chain 1, skip a chain, and double crochet into the next chain. We're going to just be working the same process all the way across the row. So we're just simply chaining 1, skipping a chain, and double crocheting into the next chain. You should end your row with a double crochet in the last chain of your row. If you'd like, pause here and meet back up with me once you've completed row 1. I'm almost to the end of the row. I skipped a chain and I have 1 more chain left, so I'm going to double crochet into that last chain. All right, perfect. So I've just completed row 1, and yours, remember, should be much, much longer than mine. Mine is just a mini sample. So now we're just going to turn our work and begin row 2. We're going to start row 2 by chaining 4. This chain 4 is going to count as our double crochet plus our chain 1. So we're not going to do anything with the first stitch. We're going to skip over the first stitch because our chain counts as that, and we're going to skip over the chain space. So we're going to start by making a double crochet into the next or second double crochet of the row. All right, we're going to chain 1, and we're going to skip the chain space, and we're going to double crochet into the next double crochet of the previous row. Chain 1, skip the chain space, and we're going to double crochet into that next double crochet. All right, chain 1, skip the chain space, double crochet into the next double crochet. chain 1, skip the chain space, double crochet into the next double crochet. And that's it. We're just going to be repeating chain 1 and double crocheting into the next double crochet from the previous row. I'm going to speed ahead a little bit, so if you'd like, pause here and meet back up with me once you get to just about the end of the row, and we'll do that together. Okay, so I'm almost at the end of the row. I'm making a double crochet and I just chained 1. So we're gonna work into the starting chain from the previous row. We're gonna skip a chain and we're gonna make a double crochet into that second chain. And I like to grab 2 strands when I do this, so it looks more like I'm working into an actual stitch. So make a double crochet, and that completes row 2. So now we can turn our work and begin row 3. We're going to start row 3 with a chain 4. That chain 4 is going to count as a double crochet plus a chain 1. So we're going to ignore that first double crochet because the chain 3 counts as a double crochet and the 4th chain is the chain 1. We're going to make a double crochet into the next double crochet. Chain 1, double crochet into the next double crochet. Chain 1, and we're going to double crochet into the next double crochet. Repeat this process until you get to the end of the row. Okay, I'm almost to the end of the row. I'm making a double crochet into that next double crochet. Now I'm chaining 1, and now I'm going to make a double crochet in the 3rd chain from the starting chain 4. So I'm counting 3 chains up. Make a double crochet into that 3rd chain from the starting chain 4. All right, that was my double crochet, and that completes row 3. You're going to be working back and forth in rows, repeating row 3 until your piece measures to be about 25 inches or the width of your piece. For reference, we're making a giant square. So if you'd like, pause here and meet back up with me once you've made your giant square. I'm no longer working with my sample. This is my actual bag. So your piece should look like this too. My bag is about 25 inches by 25 inches. And now it's time to start turning this square into our market bag. I just finished my last row, so now I can turn my work. And we're going to start working on the front of our bag. Or this could really be the back. It doesn't really matter. Start with a chain 3. The chain 3 is going to count as a half double crochet plus a chain 1. So we're going to skip that first stitch and we're going to half double crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, half double crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, half double crochet into the next stitch. So we're really just doing the same thing, but instead of making double crochets, we're working half double crochets. So you're going to repeat this process until you get to the end of the row. And what we're doing now is we're starting to work our decreases. We're going to be making the front of the bag much smaller. So as we cinch this square up, it's going to form a really pretty bag. And I can't wait for you to see it come together. If you'd like, pause here and meet back up with me once you get to the end of the row. All right, I'm almost to the end of the row. I'm making a half double crochet into the next stitch. I'm chaining 1 and I'm going to make a half double crochet into the 3rd chain from the starting chain 4 of the previous row. All right, perfect. So now we can turn our work and begin row 2 of the front of the bag. We're going to start by chaining 2. This chain 2 is going to count as a single crochet plus a chain 1. Work a single crochet into the 2nd stitch of the row. Chain 1, single crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, single crochet into the next stitch. So once again, we're repeating the same thing, but we're just switching up the stitch. So we're doing the same thing that we were in the double crochet rows, but except we're making a single crochet instead. So if you'd like, pause here and meet back up with me once you get to the end of the row. All right, I'm almost to the end of the row. I'm making a single crochet into that next stitch, chaining one, and I'm going to make a single crochet into the second chain from the starting chain 3 of the previous row. Okay, so now we can turn our work and we're ready to do row 3 of the front of our bag. And we're going to start with a chain 1. And this one's going to be just a little bit different. We're going to actually put our first stitch into the first stitch of the row. So we're going to single crochet into that first stitch. Okay, and we're not going to chain 1. We are going to single crochet into the next stitch. Okay, so single crochet into the next stitch. And that's all we're going to do. We're just going to be working single crochets into each stitch. We're not chaining one in between. We're simply working single crochets into each stitch from the previous row. So if you'd like, pause here and meet back up with me once you reach the end of the row. We're going to end row 3 by making a single crochet into the first chain of the starting chain 2 from the previous row. This completes row 3 and we can now turn our work. Now we're ready to start row 4. We're going to begin with a chain 1. We're going to work a decrease in every stitch. So to do this, we're going to insert our hook into the first stitch, draw up a loop, insert our hook into the next stitch, draw up a loop, yarn over, pull through all loops on our hook. We've just made a decrease. So repeat that again. Insert your hook into the next stitch, draw up a loop, insert your hook into the next stitch, draw up a loop, yarn over, pull through all loops on your hook. Repeat this process across the row. I'm almost to the end of the row. I'm just doing my last 2 decreases. Okay, did that one, and now I just have I have 2 stitches left, and so I'm just going to work one more decrease. Okay, so that completes row 4, and now we can turn our work. We're going to start row 5 with a chain 1. And we're simply going to single crochet into each stitch across the row. All right, I'm almost at the end of the row. We're just single crocheting into each stitch. All right, I just went into the last stitch of the row, and we're ready to turn our work. That's what it should look like. We're ready to turn our work and begin row 6. For row 6, we're going to chain 1, and we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to single crochet in each stitch across the row. I'm almost at the end of row 6. I just have a few more stitches left. Okay, I just worked my last stitch of row 6, and now we're ready to turn our work and begin row 7. Row 7 and 8 are both going to be decrease rows. We're going to start row 7 by single crocheting the first 2 stitches of the row together. So we're going to start with a chain 1, and we're going to single crochet the first 2 stitches together. We're then just going to single crochet into each stitch across the row until we land at the last 2 stitches, where we'll single crochet those 2 stitches together as well. All right, I've reached my last 2 stitches, and I'm just going to single crochet those last 2 stitches together. That concludes row 7, and now we're ready to turn our work and begin row 8. We're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to start with the chain 1, and we're going to single crochet the first 2 stitches together. And then we're going to place a single crochet into each stitch across the row until we land on the last 2 stitches of the row. All right, I've landed on my last 2 stitches and I'm just going to single crochet those 2 stitches together. And that concludes row 8. Now we're ready to turn our work and do rows 9 and 10. So these are going to be the last 2 rows of the front of our bag and they're just going to be single crochet. So start with a chain 1 and you're going to single crochet into each stitch across the row. Okay, and I'm just finishing up my last stitch of row 9. And now we're ready to turn our work and do row 10. Row 10 is a repeat of row 9. We're just going to start with the chain 1 and we're going to single crochet into each stitch across the row. Okay, I'm just doing my last stitch of row 10. And that completes the front of the bag. So as you can see, we've made a little band over the top of our bag and it's created this nice little ruching in our fabric. So I can't wait for you to see the rest of the bag come together. So now we can actually fasten this off and we're going to repeat everything we just did, but on the opposite end to work the back of the bag. And remember, the front and the back of the bag are going to look identical. I'm just calling it that for ease of explanation, but they're going to look the same and they're going to be interchangeable. So go ahead, fasten off and cut your yarn. And now we're going to rotate. And this should look exactly like it did on the other end. Remember, the chains counted as stitches. So we're just going to go into the third chain up in that corner chain. Insert your hook into that chain. And we're going to make a slip knot with our yarn. Slide the slip knot onto your hook, pull tight, and draw up a loop. We're going to start with a chain 3. And this chain 3 is going to count as a half double crochet plus a chain 1. So now you're just going to go back and repeat all of those directions. You can actually go ahead and rewind this to the beginning of the front of the bag, and you're just going to complete the tutorial exactly the same. Just don't cut your yarn at the end of row 10. Okay, so now the front and the back of the bag are done. This is what it should look like. It kind of resembles an oval or an egg. And now we're ready to work on the sides and handles. Okay, so now instead of working back and forth in rows, we're going to be working in rounds. So starting where I left off at the end of row 10, we're going to chain 1. Place a single crochet in the same stitch. This is going to be the first stitch of our round. So go ahead and mark this with a stitch marker so that way you can keep track. Place single crochets evenly along the side edge of the front band of our bag. We're going to end with a single crochet into our first large chain space. For reference, I'll be making 10 single crochets along this side edge, with my 10th single crochet being in the first chain space I come across. So I'm almost there. And now I'm at my first chain space, so I'm going to make a single crochet in there. And now we're ready to work along the side edge. So this is what your 10 single crochet along that side edge, the side front edge should look like. And we're going to work single crochets into each of those bars. So go into that first bar and single crochet. You're going to go into the next bar and single crochet. And it can be a little bit tough to get into these, but just try your best. But we're working into these bars as if they were regular stitches. So we're just working single crochets into each of these bars. And as you can see, this is naturally starting to cinch the sides of our bag. I've reached the end of this first side and I placed a single crochet into the last bar. So I'm going to place a single crochet into that chain space. And I'm just going to work single crochets along this side band. And remember, we want to maintain the same stitch count that we did on the other side of the front of our band. And I had 10 stitches, so I want to have 10 stitches here as well. So that's fine if you don't have 10 stitches. You could have 9, you could have 11, whatever you have. Just make sure it's the same number. And then my 10th and final stitch is going to go right into the corner. Okay, so we've just worked along that first side and you can see we're starting to cinch the side of our bag. And now we're going to start on our handles. To make our handle, we're going to chain 90. Okay, so I've got my 90 chains and I'm being extremely careful to make sure that my chain is not twisted. If your chain is twisted, you will have a twisted handle. So take the extra time to lay out your foundation chain and make sure it is not twisted in any way. And we're going to single crochet right into the corner stitch. So make a single crochet directly into the corner. And that'll be the first single crochet of the 10 along the side band. And we're just going to do the same thing that we did along the other side. So we're just going to single crochet evenly along this side band edge, making sure that we maintain the same number that we did on the other side. And we're just working until we get to our first bar. And if you're kind of confused on where you should start, you can make sure you just follow along the row and make sure you're starting at the same place that you did along the other side. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to work single crochets into each bar along the side. So we're just working single crochets into each of those bars. All right, I'm just working into the last bar. And now I've reached that chain space and I'm going to single crochet in there. And I'm just single crocheting evenly along this side band edge. And remember, I'm maintaining that same 10 single crochets. That I have on the other side edges. And my 10th and final stitch is going directly into the next corner. So I'm placing my 10th single crochet in there. You can see now the other side is now cinched up. And we're going to make our second handle. So once again, we're going to chain 90. All right, I've got my 90 chains for my second handle and I'm being very careful and double checking to make sure it is not twisted in any way. And I'm just going to single crochet into my first stitch of the round, and that is the stitch with the stitch marker. So go ahead and single crochet into that first stitch of the round, and we could replace our marker. And now we're ready to begin round 2. Before we begin round 2, we're going to mark a couple stitches with stitch markers so we know where to make some decreases. So if you want to take your bag and kind of lay it out flat like so, and we're going to put our edges together. So pick a side and line up your stitches as best you can and flatten them out. And we're going to mark that sidemost center stitch along the sides. So line up your stitches just like that. Grab a stitch marker and mark that center side stitch. We're going to be using those markers to mark our decrease stitches. So we're going to repeat that same process on our other side. So line up your stitches the best you can and find that center stitch and mark it with a stitch marker. Okay, so now we're ready to begin round 2. And see, you can really see the bag starting to take form. So now we're going to be basically working decreases along our side edges to cinch up the sides of our bag a little bit more. From this point forward, we're going to be working continuously in the round. So we're not going to start with a chain 1 or join stitches. We're just going to keep going. So we're going to single crochet into each stitch until we get to the last 2 stitches before our stitch marker. So just work single crochets into each stitch. All right, so I'm at my last 2 stitches before the stitch marker. And I'm going to single crochet those last 2 stitches together. So we're decreasing. So single crochet those 2 stitches together. And now we're at the stitch marker stitch, so take the stitch marker out. Single crochet into that stitch. Replace your stitch marker. And now we're going to single crochet the next 2 stitches together. So we're doing another decrease. Okay? All right, perfect. So now we're going to just single crochet all the way around. We're going to single crochet into the chains of our handle and make decreases at our next stitch marker. So if you'd like, pause here and meet back up with me until you reach your handles, and we'll work on that together. I'm almost at my first handle. Okay, I've just done my last stitch, and now I'm ready to work into my handle foundation chain. We're simply going to work single crochets into each of our handle chains. The chains might be a little bit tight, just do the best you can. And one thing I did want to mention as I am going into the chains, I like to grab the back bar along with one of the sides of the chains, if that makes sense. Do what you feel comfortable doing. I just think it creates a nice little edge. If you'd like, pause here and meet back up with me once you've made a single crochet into each of these 90 handle chains. I just have one more chain. I'm going to work a single crochet into that last chain. And now we're ready to continue working single crochets into each stitch until we get to 2 stitches before our next stitch marker. Okay, I'm at 2 stitches before my stitch marker. I'm going to single crochet those 2 stitches together. I'm going to take out my stitch marker, single crochet into the next stitch, put my marker back in, and now I'm going to single crochet the next 2 stitches together. So now you're just going to keep working single crochets into each stitch into each of the 90 handle chains until you get to the end of the round. If you'd like, pause here and meet back up with me once you make it to the end of the round. I made it to the end of the round. I just have one more stitch that I'm working into. Okay, and now we're starting our next round. So we can take out our stitch marker, stitch into that first stitch. We're making a single crochet, and then put your marker back in so you can keep track of your round. And we're just repeating the previous round. So we're single crocheting up until we get to 2 stitches before our stitch marker. And then we're going to single crochet those 2 stitches together. Okay, I'm at 2 stitches before my marker, so I'm going to just single crochet those 2 stitches together. Then I'm going to take out my marker out of the next stitch, single crochet, put the marker back in the new stitch, and then single crochet the next 2 stitches together. You're going to keep working in single crochets until you get to the next stitch marker, and you're going to do the same exact thing. So if you'd like, pause here and meet back up with me once you've made it to the end of the round. Okay, so we just made it to the end of the round. And now we're going into the first stitch of the round. So we're going to replace our stitch marker into the new stitch. And we're just going to keep working in single crochets, and we're going to repeat those decreases around our side stitch markers. So you're just repeating the same thing that you just did for the previous round. So if you'd like, once again, pause here and meet back up with me once you've made it to the end of the round. All right, so we made it back around to the end of the round again, and that was our last decrease round. So now for our next round, we are going to just work in all single crochets. We're not going to decrease, we're just going to work a single crochet into each stitch. So go ahead, go into that first stitch, replace your stitch marker, and just continue working single crochets into each stitch. You can go ahead and remove the stitch, your side stitch markers as you pass them. You no longer need them. So if you'd like, pause here and meet back up with me once you make it to the end of the round. Okay, so I made it almost to the end of the round again, and that this is our last round. So I'm just finishing up those last couple stitches, and this is my last stitch. Okay, so now I'm going to take out my stitch marker and I'm going to slip stitch into the next couple stitches just to even things out. So slip stitch, going to do the next one, the next one. And I think that looks good. That really evens things out. So now we can cut our yarn and secure. Okay, and then pull tight. And as you can see, the bag has really come together. So now all we have left to do is weave in our ends. Grab your yarn needle and thread your tail. And I'm first going to work one of the tails that are up by that are up near my handle and by the band of the bag. So I'm just going to pull the tail towards the inside of the bag, and I'm just kind of pulling the knot through a little bit just so it's not sticking out so much to the front. And I'm just going to pick kind of like a line of stitches, and I'm just going to insert my needle and just grabbing some stitches along a straight line. And I'm just weaving my needle under some loops about an inch or so, and then I'm pulling my tail all the way through. And then I just like to work back and forth in the same spot. So now I'm going to go up that same way, just kind of weaving in and out of these loops in a line of stitches. And I'm just going to do that back and forth until I feel my end is sufficiently weaved in. And I think that looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and clip my tail. Let's weave in a tail that's in the bag. So let's find a different one. Yeah, let's find some that are in the middle of the bag. Okay, so let's do this one. So we're just going to want to pull those tails to the inside of our bag, and we're going to want to weave in our ends obviously on the inside of the bag. So this is where two yarn balls would have been connected, and you'll probably have a couple of these in the middle of your bag. Okay. So I have it laid out so I can see everything nice and flat, and I'm just going to thread a tail through my yarn needle. And I'm pretty much just going to do the same thing. So I'm going to go through basically the bars of the stitches. So I'm just going to be kind of going in a line, and I'm just grabbing loops of the stitches. There's really no fancy way of doing this. You're just trying to weave in your ends as inconspicuously as possible. And I usually like to just try to find like a 1 or 2 inch line, and I like to work back and forth in that same line. So that's what I'm doing. So now I'm just going to work my way back down, basically almost the same way I came, just kind of weaving my needle through the little loops of the stitches in a line. So I went down, now I'm going to go back up. And remember, you don't want to go into the same exact place that you just came out of, or otherwise you know, you'll un you'll unweave your end. So you want to kind of grab different loops as you go back and forth in the same spot, if that makes sense. And I think that looks good. So I'm just going to go ahead and clip that tail. You're going to repeat this process for all remaining tails. You're just going to do the same thing. And once you've finished, you'll have a beautiful new bag. There you have it. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you did, please let me know by giving the video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already and would like to, make sure you subscribe so you never miss a new tutorial, podcast episode, or anything yarn related. So thank you so much for watching. Bye!